Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park. Thank you for joining us here once again on Gulfstream today. I'm Gabby Gaudette, joined by Andy Serling. And unfortunately, yesterday we were off the turf and there were showers all day long. That rain was absolutely relentless. Today it has cleared up, but unfortunately we are off the turf. But getting ready for a big day tomorrow.
No, I agree. Listen, it was raining last night at 9:30 coming home from dinner, so it wasn't just during the day. And remarkably, the track is fast, and it really is fast. And big day tomorrow. Got to protect the turf course at some point, especially because it's not the first rain we've got.
A Holy Bull day tomorrow. We also have the Swedish Chant, Kitten's Joy, Swale, and Forward Gallop. Big day. And today is a good handicapping card as well. But tomorrow's card, those are the days that you just absolutely love here at Gulfstream because it makes our job a little bit tough, but so much fun.
No, but we're handicappers. You enjoy handicapping interesting races, and there's a couple of very strong allowance races on the turf to support the card. The usual maiden races on it. It's a fun card, a big card, 12 races. It's been a big week here, a lot to go. I think hopefully today's races, yesterday was a struggle. There were some pretty tough winners on yesterday's card. Today's card looked a little more formful, but it's early.
And surprisingly so, there were some tickets that were 6 out of 6 in the pick 6 that returned over $15,000. But of course, we didn't have any singles. We had two singles,
actually,
I believe, going into the final leg, but they did not win. So we have a nice carryover over $230,000 today. So we'll take a look at some of our featured wagers and our carryovers. And we started off with race 1 on the card. That starts a rolling super high 5 carryover over $3,200 there in that wager. As we get into the early pick 5 as well. Kicks off in race 1. Later on the card, race 6 starts at 20 cent, Rainbow Pick 6. Once again, that carryover is over $230,000 for the sequence. And we get to race 7. That does kick off the 50 cent late pick 5. Got a lot of ground to cover. So speaking of some of those pick 5s, walk us through your early pick 5 ticket.
I have a pick 5 ticket actually in the first Suns. I think it's $36 at this point, using 4 horses in the first race, the 1, 3, 5, 7, singling a heavy favorite in the second race. We'll see if we can limp through with that one, and then going 3 by 2 by 3 in here. In the first race, a somewhat wide open race. I highly doubt my top choice in here, the 3-horse Red Fever, and Joel Rosario and John Mateen are looking to have a double, having won the last race yesterday. Into this race, actually be 3 in a row for Joel, won our 10th as well. I don't think you're going to see that horse at even money. You are trying to beat this horse.
I am trying to beat this horse. 5 to 1 on the morning line, but I thought that there were some. Of course, you have to respect him, and if I were playing the early pick 5, I would have used him as well. But I didn't think that the 5 Boom Boom Frankie's really doing anything wrong last time out. He did have a slight regression in form, trying the turf for the first time, but he reeled off 3 victories in a row. I like the fact that he draws a good post. He's got that stalking speed. He should have a legitimate pace in front of him. I just thought that this is a horse who won 5 races last year. He's a 6-time winner, and of course the condition for 4-year-olds are non-winners of 3.
Yeah, listen, I'm using the horse in the pick 5. It's not as though I don't think he has a chance in here. A similar situation with the 3 for you, where you're not using you don't like the horse, but you would use him. I don't know about Boom Boom Frankie. You know, he beat a pretty weak field 2 races back. I'm not saying he's me any killers. I like the turn back. Looks like he's not cheap. I thought he was a little bit cheap, and for me, Red Fever, obviously, if he was even money, I wouldn't like Red Fever. I doubt he's even money in this race. Just thought it was a significant drop down for a horse who ran in a very, very tough 25 last time out.
He did. We saw Grava and Gombe Dancer as well. We'll take a look to the inside. The 1, You Can't Stop Me. This is a horse for Kathleen O'Connell, who's dropping back down to a more reasonable level. The only thing about this horse, last time out, I thought he got kind of caught up in some of those quick early fractions going the 7 furlongs. Today, going 7 furlongs with that rail post, I just wonder if they're just going to send him today and maybe have and dictate. He could get pressure from his outside.
Well,
though.
the 3 looks like he could probably go with him, but they have no choice but to send him. I agree. And the horse he dueled with the Tampa finished behind him, actually. And I think is about a horse that's capable of running about 20 points faster. So the pace took a toll on that horse. He's a player, as is the 7.
Okay, moving on to the second race on the card. A starter optional claimer going 7 furlongs on the main track. Make the rider Vicente Guriel on the 2 Twinkling Time. And it looks like 1-horse race, a 6 Moonshine Promise, 4 to 5 on the morning line. We'll take a look at the most recent replay for this 7-year-old mare on the 8th of January.
I don't really think there's a whole lot that you and I need to say, and you can just watch this horse winning. You've got a horse that looks like she'll probably be stalking Miss Darla in here. take over from that one. It's not as though she's a horse that needs to be able to control, and she simply appears to be faster than her competition. There's no recent effort by any of the horses in here that's comparable to 5 of her 6 recent efforts.
I agree with you. Miss Darla could get aggressive, but the blinkers are now coming off and now cutting back to 7 furlongs, as she could just be hounded by Moonshine Promise, just making her go a little bit faster than naturally she wants to go. So Miss Darla makes sense, but again, I thought that beyond the 6 Moonshine Promise, who's obviously the horse to beat, we're grasping at straws here, but I threw in the 3 Bahia de Oro at a price. This is a type of mare who, she doesn't have a lot of natural early speed, but I'm just hoping she can maybe make that one swooping run. I'm just thinking that Miss Darla might be compromised by the speed of Moonshine Promise, and it might fall into the hands of maybe a mid-pack horse.
Yeah, I thought Al's Rosie was a likely horse to pick up the pieces if it falls apart in that manner. You're just going in a different direction.
Okay, race 3 on the card, an open $25,000 claiming event. 6 furlongs onto the main track. And looking at this field, we have the 2 Scoff first off the claim for trainer Eddie Pliza. This is the direction I go in, but quite frankly, you could probably sell me on multiple different horses here.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have the same 3 horses in our play. Scoff seems fine to me. Eddie Pliza's numbers off the claim in the dirt are good. He's 3 for 9. Doesn't really claim that many horses. Seemed to do a decent job. He's obviously a very good trainer. We'll see. It's interesting. This horse was claimed off a win and moving up in class. It didn't really work out last time. I didn't really have any major excuse for the horse last time out. Thought you'd have a pace involving the 1, 2, and 3, and for me, I wanted horses closer to the pace, and I thought the 3 would have the best stalking position on the outside of them, and a horse that was wide last time against a gold rail, the 3. I'm a sucker for horses that are against the bias, horses that were on dead rails, and horses that had wide trips against strong rails. Baby I'm Worth It was wide. Obviously, it's not a 45 length excuse, but it was also a much, much tougher field. The time before in the Hud really ran a race that's fast enough to beat these horses, and I just think she fits.
I agree with you. Baby I'm Worth It there, taking a cut back in distance. I like the fact that she is turning back from the mile, just because I do think it'll give her the ability to maybe relax a little bit more behind Scoff. Scoff seems to be very fast. But even though they stepped up in class with this filly last time out before the claim, talking about the 2 Scoff, I thought that we have seen several of these conditions come up relatively easy. And I thought of those conditions, this one might have been one of the tougher ones, because Katira Rock, she went on to, I believe, finish 4th against Stakes Company at Tampa. So all considering, I thought it was a decent race. The 5 Sugar Pie Squared, I believe you came up with a stat for the barn, Michael Tomlinson.
I thought this was an interesting stat on a horse for a trainer who's, I think he's impressed both of us in this meet. His horses have run very well. Coming off of a maiden win in their last start, these are in claiming races. Maybe I omitted that and kind of screwed it up, but this is coming in claiming races, actually. He's 0 for 12 off of maiden wins in claiming races. I don't know how good that race was anyway. You know, how good are those 15 claimer maidens? Maybe this horse gets a trip sitting behind the speeds. The 1, 2, and 3 all potentially have speed. I'm going to use her, but I really do prefer Baby I'm Worth It.
I looked at some of the horses who kind of were in that field and exited that field, and it wasn't very strong in my opinion. But for what it's worth, Michael Tomlinson with some of his horses coming from Churchill to Gulfstream have been doing relatively well. He's actually batting at about 50% with his horses making that transfer here. So I think she might be one to use. If anyone else, a fringe player, the 7 Scotland Bay.
Not for me. I'm still annoyed about that horse beating me out of a $2,500 pick 5.
Okay, stay bitter.
I am bitter, and she's not good enough to beat these horses without a miracle.
Well, that's why I said she was a fringe player. I don't think that she's going to beat them, but we'll move on to.
I wish that she stayed in the barn for the entire meeting at Gulfstream.
Okay, well, race 4 on the card is $30,000 claimant event. 7 furlongs on the main track, and I believe there's no super high 5 wagering in this race. We have a couple of scratches here, originally carded for the turf, will run on the main track, and I had such a good idea on this race on the turf. I loved India Naughty, and now I'm just back going to the drawing board.
Oh, on the turf. I liked India Naughty as well. I agree. The only problem with this race was I was looking at Mike Welsh's picks last night, and he and I had the exact same 3 in order, so there was little chance of that happening. So he and I all liked India Naughty. I don't think she had any chance in here. You know, I got a text from Rajiv Mirage this morning, and he reminded me that her dam, Be Fair, had won, and he rode her the Lake George at Saratoga off the turf in the mud. I think it was a Lucas horse. but of course it was muddy that day. But this horse, I mean, Indian Naughty can win this race. It's not like his one dirt race was against a field that was not tougher than this one.
I agree with you, but talking about the 10 Clash and Cash, a horse that draws to the outside, I thought that this horse will probably send or show a lot of speed from that outside post at the 7 furlongs. However, my main concern is the 7 furlongs. This is a relatively easier race. If they can dictate on the front end, I thought that might be the best case scenario, but he has shown a tendency to maybe tucker out a little bit before the wire at 3/4.
Yeah, we'll see. He's supposed to be in a controlling position given the scratches in this race, and I'm hoping he can get the distance. We'll see if he does it. He didn't run that badly going 7 in the turf, 2 back, but turf and dirt are very different animals because he has to run harder. You know, your top pick, Protection, I probably should have added that horse to my pick 5 because I scratched one of my players, and Protection definitely has a chance in this race going to turf. The horse has won in the turf and run well enough.
Well, this is an interesting horse because I believe he even started his career off on the dirt, and he was a maiden special weight winner at Delaware on the dirt. But he's clearly a much better turf horse. I'm glad that they found that transition. But his race against Allowance Company at Delaware in the slop I thought was okay because he did seem to make a nice middle move and then just kind of flatten out. And I'm banking on the fact that it was a little too far. 9 furlongs on the dirt might not be his cup of tea. So I'm taking a little bit of a shot here, but the 10 does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, but I agree. I think Protection is dangerous, as is the 3. All these horses can win this race.
Okay, going to race 5, open 12,500 claiming event, 6 furlongs on the main track. And I really tried to beat the one, Alex the Dude, but I couldn't get too creative in this race. So you land on the 6. I kind of had a tough time with this race.
Well, you and I have the same 3 horses. I think we basically agree here. You know, I bet Alex the Dude last time out, and I know he's dropping down, and he's a sort of logical type in here. I certainly wouldn't let him beat me, and I've used him. My feeling with the 6, here's my idea with Flip Shot. Flip Shot ran in that quagmire last time. That wasn't just sloppy. That was a period, that race particularly, where it was absolutely pouring out.
Yeah.
And I really feel as though it's reasonable to excuse any horse's effort in that race. Not that he was going to win anyway. He was 30-1 in there. But he is a horse that's been running against much, much better horses. And if you throw out his last race and you look at his dirt races, he's just a very logical horse in this race. And I feel like some people might get scared off because of his last effort. And I consider it a complete throwout.
Yeah, especially his last race there, as you were mentioning, but even a 6 furlong sprint at Gulfstream Park West against Stakes Company, that race came up relatively tough as we saw Cattree really stay in form, transitioning his form to Gulfstream. So I agree with you. He might be a little bit overlooked off of his subpar performances as of late. But the 8 Nuke, I believe we have a replay, and we'll take a look. We'll go back to his replay on January 6th.
Yeah, you know, Flashing Light, who beat him, might just have been a little bit better. I thought he ran fine in this race. I don't know about you. He probably was just second best in here, but his second best in that race was better than his previous efforts. I think if he continues with that for obviously a very sharp barn, he's a logical horse along with Alex the Dude. Aren't they the 2 right horses here if you just use the logical players?
I agree with you. That's what makes this race kind of tricky because there are a lot of horses that you could maybe handicap off of class reliefs or that are a little bit dirtied by their recent form. I don't know. These are the kind of races that I find interesting, but 1, 6, and 8, I guess we all agree on the top 3.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make case for a number of these. I guess Mr. Shipman's not impossible, but for what it's worth, I didn't put this stat up, but horses claimed from George Navarro in dirt races are 20 for 132 with a $1.05 ROI over the last 5 years. Not a good sign. It's
one thing to claim certain horses off of them, but these dirt claimers, especially sprinters, you probably want to stray away.
He's a tough guy to claim from, and it's been shown in the numbers.
Okay, well, that's races 1 through 5 in the early pick 5. When we come back, we're going to talk about the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. I have a nice affordable ticket right after this commercial break.
I should have added Protection.
Welcome back to Gulfstream today and talking about the 20-cent Rainbow Pick 6. We have a carryover over $230,000 today. It does kick off in race 6 on this 11-race card. And I'll walk you through my ticket here. $32.40, so very affordable. And this actually gives you the ability that if you like this ticket and you're following along, why don't throw in a couple horses because, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I'm keying off of the 7 Shagaf in race 10. I do think that he's the horse to beat.
The greatest horse that's ever lived. He's not just a horse to beat.
Okay.
He may fly into the paddock. They may replace the Pegasus statue with Shagaf actually later today.
Okay, well, we will see. Using 3 horses in the races 6 through 9 and capping it off with just 2 in the final leg of the sequence. So we'll talk about race 6 to kick us off, which I thought this was, I don't know.
A nightmare. I think I called Nostradamus last night, actually, and he gave me my selections because I had absolutely no idea.
This is tough. I had an opinion with the one Rhythm Queen, even on the dirt, but obviously she's not running today.
Why did they scratch her?
I don't know. We can't get into that and waste precious time here on this morning show talking about why Rhythm Queen is scratched.
Precious time. I like the 7, 10, 5 next.
The 7 makes sense. Again, looking at Ladies Lunar Luck, she's the most formful mare going into the race in terms of her turf form. But if you look at her dirt races, she won an open 12,500 5-horse field at Monmouth, and it was relatively slow. So I respect her. I'm using her. Miss Tatey Cat. I'll just go through my
Please, don't let me interrupt.
Miss Tatey Cat, I thought, was actually pretty strong early fractions at Gulfstream earlier in January on the sloppy steel track. She opened up on the field, and she stopped, which is a concern for sure.
She looks like speed here.
She does look like the speed, so that's why I kind of opt for her on top. And you threw in the 10, Image of Rachel.
I did. I like 7, 10, 5 here.
Okay, race 7. We'll move on with that said. And this race 7.
Nostradamus is going to fill in for me, actually, when we do the pre-race.
Okay, race 10 on the card, though, kicks off the 50-cent late pick 5 as well. And I think you have a ticket.
I do have a ticket.
You got to take a pass on race 6.
You know, right, because I'm special. I didn't single the greatest horse in the world, Shagaf. I actually had singled him, and it was a $54 play, and Scratches got it down to 27. And the reality is that Rally Cry for Top Fletcher is a dangerous horse, as we'll talk about. So I'm using 3 horses to start it out, the 5, 9, and 12 in this race, and was surprised. One of the horses I was planning on using was the 13. I was surprised. I'm always amazed. The track is fast, and 2 of the 4 MTOs came out in here okay.
Oh, one never knows. I don't know. This was an interesting race. Which horses did you use to kick off the sequence here in the pick 5?
Weren't paying attention?
I was paying attention.
But you weren't paying attention. Just admit it.
I was looking over there, figuring out what I'm going to get for lunch.
What are you thinking? 5, 9, and 12. I'm using the 3 horses I have listed right up there.
Okay, well, looking at the 5, 9, and 12, the 5 Jamie's Dancer, I really wanted to pick on top because the first inclination to this race.
You thought of it, but you knew I was picking her, and you didn't want to embarrass yourself by picking the same horse as me.
I wanted to go with someone else. The first thought that I had on this race was there are a lot of fast horses on the main track, at least horses that want the lead. And we could see a decent early pace, and I thought that the 5 Jamie's Dancer is one that has that stalking position, could close from off the pace if the speed just falls apart in front of her.
One of the reasons I picked her.
Okay,
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that for me.
Oh, you're welcome.
What she
Anything
said.
you want to add?
Not really. She also running against much better horses in her dirt races. I'm going to tell you the problem. Since you've told me why you like my horse, I'm going to tell you why I don't like your horse. The only time she's ever run well on the dirt has been at Mountaineer. Transferring form from Mountaineer to other racetracks seems to be about the most impossible thing I've ever seen in racing.
And you know me, I always kind of go against Mountaineer horses and Charlestown horses because those maiden special weights and those allowance races are a little bit dubious. But I will say that I looked at some of these horses that she did beat. She beat them significantly in those races. They went on to really hold form against Starter Allowance Company at Presque Isle over the summer. Some of them went to Churchill and Keeneland and held form against Open Company. So relatively speaking, I don't think those races were awful. And she gets LASIK. She has speed. I'm just going with her. She's not a horse that I frequently go with, but at least I can make a little bit of a case.
Yeah, she was also 1-5 in 2 of her races and 4-5 there. Listen, I suppose she's not impossible here. I'm not using her. I'm going to use horses like the 9 as well, Twist and Turn. It's just, I don't love it here, but it looks like a big step up. It's not really a huge step up. And the 12, Gracious Humor, looks very logical off the dirt races as well. And you can see that horse is a $6,000 claimer as well. So the 9 and 12 fit here. I'm hoping the 5's found a race that's basically a modified at $6,000 claiming dirt race.
A big class really from the prior dirt races, excuse me. We'll go on to the 8th race, and 6,250 non-winners of 2 lifetime condition, 6 furlongs onto the main track. And I thought it really boiled between primarily 3 horses in here, between the 1, 4, and the 3.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. They're the 3 horses I'm going to use. I don't know about you, but midterm exam for me, I can make an excuse last time for this horse. The rail was dead. The horse got off it a little bit on the stretch, but it was right on the rail around the turn, and I think that was a major, major reason this horse ran as bad as it is. And Crazy Frank C, who finished second in there, went down to the rail after this horse dropped back, and Crazy Frank C came back, won, and improved its figure 13 points, and that's very important here because if she improves her figure 13 points, 14 points, and gets back or even more to the big fig she was running before, she's the horse to beat along with clear status.
I agree for all those points as well, and Antonio Sano does very well with these types of first off the claims, especially with lower level claimers, so that's always a feather in the cap. The 4th clear status is one that figures as well, comes out of a race behind Cool Man Walking. That horse had a bit of a class relief. However, we do have a stat on the 3, Jack Fallon, for Jane Sibeli.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting stat. 50% drop downs in the dirt, and Jack Fallon is dropping from 12,500 to this level. She's 11 for 31, 245 ROI, so she's getting it done at a high rate with horses that are actually paying over 5-2, which is pretty strong to see that happening. Just an obvious use. It's hard to make strong cases for the others in here.
It's always dangerous, so don't let this horse's last race swayed you from picking him, because Jane Sibeli, she is sneaky, and she does, with these class droppers, does very, very well.
That was a better field than these.
Oh, for sure.
By a lot.
And we'll move on to the 9th race, originally carded for the turf. Will run on the main track at 7 furlongs for this maiden $75,000 event, and a lot of scratches. And I think the obvious horse in here on the main track would be the 6, Silvertown. It will probably be well bet, considering the maiden special weights at Saratoga, Keeneland, Churchill. But is this a horse that will win by 3, or is this a horse that might find another horse to beat him today?
Yeah, you have to use him in your multi-race bets,
sure.
but he's now found a new track that he can fail in a maiden race at a short price, because he's doing it all over the country, and now he's at Gulfstream. He can win, but 7-5, 9-5, 3-1, 9-2 to 1. It's a short price every single time he runs, and all he does is disappoint in his last race. Wet track, still his worst race yet.
But even at Churchill, it was an off-the-turf race, 1 mile and a 16th, and he was bet down to the favorite, and he still didn't deliver.
Bad.
So that was the one reason why I had to go against him today, was because even though he's in the past, he has faced an off-the-turf field, which, you know.
It was 1 mile and a 16th.
It was 1 mile and a 16th.
So it might have been the 2 turns. Listen. You put on top, the horse I have second, and this is the interesting Wise Guy horse in the race, the 15.
Yeah, coming out of Maiden Special Weight Company, a very tough race, as we see, bar none, is a very good Mark Casse horse, and we'll see how good he is. We'll see how good he is later on. When is it? The next race, the following race, race 10. So this is a horse who I thought, well, won impressively that day. And we also saw Dixie Runner, who was a first-time starter for Chad Brown, I believe a high-price purchase as well. So all considering, we'll see how successful or how strong that maiden special weight was today, probably after the 10th race. But it's coming out of a strong field, and I think you can make a solid case that this horse could beat the 6.
It's an interesting race it's coming out of, because it was billed as a good field going in. It was not a fast race. It actually came up pretty slow. And bar none rode a gold rail. The reason I think the Dixie Runner who's in tomorrow is more promising out of was A, a horse for Chad Brown that probably wants more distance, but B, was a horse that was 4 or 5 wide against a very strong rail. And the reason I liked looking up was the fact that this horse raced 4 to 5 wide against the gold rail last time out. So I want a horse who's against the bias, and there aren't too many other places I really want to go in here. I can't believe you didn't have your horse 14 Nidge in here. I mean, this was your horse last time. How can you possibly turn your back on Nidge so quickly? You have no loyalty to Nidge.
The $3,000 purchase that debuted at against Maiden Special Weight Company. He could do well, but
He's your horse. I didn't like him.
I'm going against him today. You know what that means.
I like Mr. Smith, who doesn't come out of the fastest race either. But, you know, Mr. Smith wasn't going to win last time, but I thought he was really getting his momentum around the turn when he was stopped briefly, and it might have affected him a little bit. He still got second. How good was that race? I don't know. But I thought this horse was interesting going in, lost to a hot Pletcher horse, and I'm hoping Mr. Smith can get it done. You and I are on the same page with the same three horses in this race.
Well, even if you look at the figures, too, this horse debuted with a 56 fire speed figure against Mead and 40 Company at Monmouth. Off the layoff, he held relatively the same number. So I do like to see that. If he stays consistent and we see a little bit of regression from the 6 Silvertown, he's going to be right there.
Yeah, he's got to improve a little bit. And the horse that beat him in his debut, it's a 4.5 furlong race. I don't want to make too much of the fig one way or another, but Sunny Ridge is coming back in his first start in the Withers, I think, tomorrow at Aqueduct. This is a horse who finished second as a long shot in the Champagne and actually was second in the Delta Jackpot as well. Sunny Ridge is a good horse.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the 10th race on the card, the first half of the late daily double, 1-turn mile for this allowance optional claiming event. And we have the likes of the 2 Rally Cry and the 7 Shaggoff. Which replay do you want to start off with?
I want to look at Shaggoff. And, you know,
okay.
I'm joking about Shaggoff, but I'm not entirely joking. I mean, I'm 90% joking that he's the greatest horse of all time. I'm 100% joking he's the greatest horse of all time. This is a very, very good horse, and he's a horse that is on everybody who's paying attention's radar. This race, there were 2-mile races at Aqueduct that day. Seymour Deeney, who actually had taken the worst of Mohe Man in their respective debuts when finishing a close second to him at Belmont, won by a pole and ran 0.79 seconds slower than Shaggoff. This is a first-timer for Chad Brown. You can see the ease with which he runs. It's a horse that broke well in there, was always in good position. He draws well as an outside stalking position here. Mohe Man's the horse from Shadwell that deservedly is on everyone's radar, having won stake races and done it. And Shaggoff's just got a maiden win. He's going to have to prove it against tougher horses as things go on. But to run that kind of fast race first time out, this is a serious, serious race.
He is a very serious horse, and not to kind of prolong the
obvious.
Yeah, the obvious. But the way he did it, the time was very, very strong, and obviously the time was very impressive. But the way he did it, it almost looked as though Irad Ortiz just never really asked him. He just made this big swooping run, and he just was, visually, that's exactly what you want to see in a horse that runs that kind of time in debut. So he's obviously a very talented horse. But the 2 Rally Cry is really no slouch. We'll go back and take a look at Rally Cry's most recent replay on the 26th of December.
Listen, Rally Cry is a talented horse. I don't like horses like Rally Cry. They tell you before they run, these are the greatest horses of all time, and they go out at 1 to 5 and run third. And I'll tell you something, he had an absolutely perfect trip first time out. Is it possible he's a horse that's better going longer? Maybe, but he really didn't run that well first time. Morse Code, I'm looking forward to him coming back. The horse that beat him at the wire for second, that's a half to honor code for Shug. He's a Tappet. He beat Wheels Up Now, who's an okay horse for West Point, but he's had his chances. He had failed in his prior start, albeit behind a horse that finished second, the Jerome at Aqueduct. He's okay, and it's Todd Pletcher. I'm not going to just dismiss this horse out of hand. That would be foolish. This is a real test for Shaggoff in here. And the thing you were saying about Shaggoff, to get back to him, a lot of times these horses look impressive and they're highly touted, but they get low figures. And all the people are saying, oh, he was so beautiful. He can go faster if he has to. It's not the case. This horse went fast, as you say, in that race. He really delivered. Listen, bar none may be okay, though he rode a gold rail last time out, but he better be better than okay to beat both of Rally Cry and Shaggoff in this race. It's a stakes quality race.
I agree, and I think going into it, that's what you have to think of. Maybe he's running for third place, but I think this is a horse that obviously, given his breeding, he's going to improve with distance. Whether he's good enough to beat horses like Rally Cry and Shaggoff today is the big question. It is, I think this race, it is what it is. Rally Cry, Shaggoff are the 2 horses to beat on paper, and if we can see an advancement from Bar None, I would be happy with just that.
Listen, Bar None might win the Travers. I don't know, he might win the Derby, for all I know. These horses, they're young horses with 1 race. He's going to have to improve dramatically to be that kind of horse. But this is very possibly a race that people will be remembering later this year. These are very good. The race to stake tomorrow, you've got Mohamed, and he's a very tough horse to beat against Greenpoint Crusader, but this race may be just as good in a lot of ways.
Well, these are the races, too. You scope out these 3-year-olds, and sometimes you're pleasantly surprised, and sometimes you get very disappointed. And these are the races that you have to really pay attention to and how it figures out from there. But I'm hoping that we are pleasantly surprised from one of these runners.
Well, right. I'd love to see both these horses run really well because the game is enhanced by having talented runners. And to be perfectly frank, this is not a good year. The 3-year-olds that we have seen so far, outside of Songbird, they're not very good. With all due respect to Mohaymen, who's a very nice horse, running 95 buyers and being leaders of division along with Nyquist, who's running high 80 buyers. There wasn't a single triple-digit buyer from the 2-year-olds last year. That is not a good sign. Speed figures aren't the be-all and end-all, but they're important. You know, I remember, and you talk about allowance here, it's nice to see an allowance race with good horses as opposed to everybody that's going to stake races. When I was here in the mid-90s, and 96 was, of course, a year where you had an incredible crop of 3-year-olds. I remember seeing Skip Away at allowance races down here, Louis Couture's coming back at allowance race. I remember in 94, horses like the Hare coming back. They didn't always run in stakes, and this is where you see so many of the good horses, and this is that kind of race.
I agree with you on all those points. I'm really excited for this race, and obviously this race will probably produce some of the horses that we'll see later on throughout the meet as well.
Right, whether it's the Fountain of Youth, the Florida Derby, other stakes around the country, whether they go to Oaklawn or down to Fairgrounds or back up to Aqueduct for races like the Gotham and the Wood. These are good horses.
Okay, well, we'll cap off this Friday card with the 11th and final race, a maiden $35,000 event. And 1 mile on the main track. Lots of scratches in here, but I believe you liked the 13 Princeps Senatus last time out. And
Good pick.
I'm going in that direction too. I'm only using 2 horses in the final leg of the pick 6 because I do think that this horse is the horse to beat on paper.
Absolutely. I don't like the last effort, but it's a drop down, and this horse has fast races. Even the last race is good enough to win here, and hopefully he can build on it. What about Moonlit Friday? Do you like a horse that appears to be more of a turf horse? I had liked this horse actually a little bit on the dirt. The turf.
I like this horse a little bit on the turf as well, but now the fact that Belmont decides to keep this horse on the dirt, I mean, you have to kind of trust
He'll take shots and off the turf. One of the things I really like about him.
And sometimes they do actually pan out very well. And this horse is by Leighton Heat out of a favorite trick mare. The mare was kind of a cheaper dirt sprinter as well. I'm just banking on the fact that this horse has taken a drop in class from the maiden special weight company, and he very well could run well on talent alone.
What about Mill Creek, the 15 horse who you've left out? I know he kind of sucked up for second, but I thought he might want a little bit more ground. He's second off a lay. I mean, it was kind of interesting that Brian Lynch shipped this horse all the way down here. Now, he probably shipped down here to run on the turf, but in the dirt, this horse made a lot of sense as well.
It made a lot of sense. He kind of looks like one of those deep closers at the 1-turn mile at this distance, but he does make sense. If I were to use, he's my 4th pick in here. I mean, you're grasping at straws now, I think, after the 13, because he is coming out of the strongest race.
Yeah, the 13 is the horse to beat. He really didn't run well last time, but he is the horse to beat.
Okay, and that's races 1 through 11. We do have a really good day today and really excited about race 10, that nice allowance optional claiming event, but a good day today and a great weekend tomorrow. Once again, we do start early. Just a reminder, 12:05 p.m. post time tomorrow. With that said, we're going to take a quick break and stop talking, at least for a short amount of time, and Larry Comas will be back here quickly with all those scratches and changes. Best of luck.